Look, I've been in this industry enough years, over 30 years now. And when you really see what it is our industry does for the nation, for a nation, for nations all over the world, what you see it does, and the perception of it, they diametrically opposite, and we need to change that. My journey, my belief is, without this industry, nothing gets made. We do not eat. We do not have medical services without the recycled materials industry. And it all starts with there, and it gets into the steel industry, and then it gets into aluminum and copper and downstream. Look, I might have drank the Kool-Aid, but I believe wholeheartedly this industry is what makes our lives sustainable, better, and if you look to the future and everything in the sustainable world and the circular economies that we talk about, and we want to talk about decarbonization, it starts with the steel industry, because electric arc furnaces reduces energy consumption and CO2 emissions far greater than melting virgin materials. Same with aluminum, same with copper, same with that. So our industry actually is doing something to make the world cleaner, more sustainable. And when you talk circular economy, taking obsolete metals and being able to process them, recycle them, and get them back into something new, that's a story we're telling. And I'm all in. Chips all in on the table on this one.
Repurpose is about messaging. It's about the whole concept of recycling, because when you ask somebody what recycling is, immediately they think of the plastic bottle or the aluminum can. But when you celebrate the 96% of what's really being recycled in this country, that is what's going to the infrastructure to this great nation of ours. Without the recycled materials industry, without real recycling on industrial level, we don't have the products we need. We have to change the way we message our industry. Once you see it, you can't unsee the truth, what goes into this great country of ours. Messaging matters, words matter, recycled materials industry matter. It is essential for our daily lives. It's that simple.
Go live a day without recycled materials. It's a powerful idea.
So we brought in Michael Meslansky, and he is the word guru. Today, I have the language guru with me, Mr. Michael Meslansky. Michael, welcome.
It is great to be here, John. I'm super excited about this.
Well, fantastic. You know, Michael, we first met with your work with ISRI, the Institute of Scrap Recycling Industries, about the language that our industry uses. I first met Michael Meslansky in 2012, over a decade ago, when I was chairman of ISRI at our convention. Let's first talk about your role in your business. You are a language guru. What is that? Tell the people who listen to this, what is a language guru? What are you specifically focusing on for your clients?
So our business is built around this idea that it's not what you say that matters, it's what your audience hears.
And our industry had a horrible habit of saying one thing and the public heard something completely different.
And if you think about the way that organizations communicate, very often they build a message based on what they think sounds good.
We wanted to bring him in and have a focus group about our industry.
But they have a whole different set of beliefs, experiences, attitudes than their audiences have, whether it's their customers, regulators, other stakeholders.
And at the time, we realized back in 2012, as an industry, we didn't have a good image.
And what often happens is you go out and communicate, and people don't like your message, or they don't understand your message, or they don't believe your message, because they don't know you the way that you know you. Our job is to understand where that gap is, and then find the right language so that we can close it.
So we had Michael come in, do a focus group at our convention. It was quite insightful, but there wasn't a necessity for it in 2012.
Words matter, right? The language that we use to describe things makes a big difference in how it's perceived. The way that we talk shapes the way that people think.
And that was important. That was the first step in really changing the narrative. So when I sat down with Michael to talk about this industry and why it is so important, why is it so important to really talk about things people are going to listen to? What are they going to hear? Not what you want to say, not what you think you should say, but truly what needs to be said so people can start grasping the necessity, the essential nature of the recycled materials industry. And without Michael, quite frankly, we'd still be out there floundering, but Michael brought it into focus for us, and now, at least here, during Repurposed, we're able to really discuss what it is our industry does and say it in the words that have meaning that people will listen to, from our policymakers to our regulators to the public. I got an email from a friend of mine who works at Commercial Metals asking me, would I be interested in filming Commercial Metals and what they do? And when I saw that, I mean, I couldn't say yes fast enough. And I'm like typing on, I didn't respond to the email. I just picked up the phone and called my friend. I said, Alton, heck yeah, and let's get her done. And so we set up a series of Zoom meetings with the people. And when I got the call at the ISRI convention in Nashville in April of 2023 saying that yes, they are in and they would love to participate in Repurposed, I was on cloud nine. I was so excited. I knew right then by CMC participating in Repurposed, we're going to be able to tell the story that will change the minds forever in this country. Commercial Metals Company was a must-get from the get-go.
It's fine.
Okay.
No, we series, we don't
Raw.
as real as possible.
Okay.
And, you know, it just.
I'm Peter Matt, the CEO of CMC.
Do you think we need to educate even our employees more, even get into the classrooms? Where does the education start from? Does it start here in our own companies and then works its way in the schools? Or do we start in the schools so when they get here to our companies, they're already educated on it?
Well, I would say we're doing both. And it's a core tenet of our kind of human resources approach. So first of all, our employees, I think our employees have a good sense of the range of recycling and the ESG footprint of the company. But to your point, people on the outside don't. And so we've got a number of initiatives where we're going into high schools, we're partnering with local communities and kind of going in and educating people about our industry, offering internships and jobs to kids coming out of high school, partnering with trade schools to educate the students about what we can bring to the table as a career opportunity. And we've had great success with that. People who get the chance to see the industry are attracted to it.
This company is vertically integrated. Not only are they a steel mill, They're also a metal recycler, plus they're a rebar fabricator.
My name's Ty Garrison. I'm Senior Vice President of Operations at Commercial Metals Company.
Why is there such a misperception of metal recycling facilities to be called junk and waste? Why is that perception there when the reality is we are the raw material that makes the mill run?
Yeah, I just think it's really a lack of information, John. I think it's, you and I have lived in this world for a long time, and we've been informed and we've seen what happens. But for a normal person walking down the street anywhere in the United States, if they see a large pile of what they would consider something that's not usable, they immediately are going to think that's trash, that's waste, that should go to a landfill. But we know that that product is very valuable. I think that's the beauty of recycled steel.
They understand every facet, what goes into making rebar and what goes into making rebar that actually arrives to a construction site. How in our local communities are we going to change the perception that a metal recycler is the raw material supplier and absolutely vital, so the health and vitality of the metal recycler is paramount to the success of any steel mill? How are we going to do this?
I think there needs to be a larger push by the steel industry, the steel community, to better communicate this circular economy idea, right? Chris Westrick, I'm the Vice President of Sustainability and Government Affairs for CMC. I don't think people really realize that recycling of cans and plastics is no different than recycling of the automobile that's reached its end of life or the refrigerator. I think there's an aspect there where we need to shed better light on the overall recycling.
I'm Jennifer Durbin, Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer at CMC.
We talk about misconceptions of our industry because it looks a little gritty. But this industry, we need to spread the word. How are we going to spread the word?
Communication is key. And the forum in which we are communicating is really important. So locally within our communities, getting our name out there is vitally important.
Their ability to articulate the story and the image that our industry needs was paramount to the success of what we're doing here.
And so that's one thing, is redefining your brand and making sure that people understand who is this company and what are all the great things that they're doing.
That's why CMC was the company. They know it from the start to the finish, what's important, why this industry is necessary, and what makes us essential. What am I looking at volume-wise of inventories? So for scale, so when people see this, they go, whoa, what is that?
Right here, what you're probably looking at is probably easily close to 3,000 tons.
So knowing the market, so people have to understand, people, when they see a pile of this, they call it junk, they'll call it waste. But when you start putting a dollar figure on this, at this 3,000 ton, it has a minimum value, market value, because it's a commodity of $600,000 to $700,000, they no longer call it waste, they no longer call it junk. Dealing with Michael Smyslansky in this, they called it the Lexicon Project, talked about how our industry was focusing completely on the wrong things that make people listen.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, one thing that has been true in the energy industry and in many industries is that successful industries get closer to their customers. They use language that their customers understand. They use language that their customers respond to. They don't speak the insular language of the industry. They don't use the jargon of the industry. They make it about the customer, and when you do that, you tend to be more successful.
And when you think about an automobile, that you can hold the automobile at the end of being shredded in the palm of your hand, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've done a lot of research on our industry and you've helped our industry. Tell us, what was the first thing when you took this project? What was the first thing you went, whoa, they need it? What was your first moment with our industry?
Every time you ask people what they think of when they think about recycling, they say the same thing. They say the blue bin. So you say recycling, people focus on the blue bin. When they focus on the blue bin, they focus on the stuff that isn't getting into the blue bin, or the stuff that once it gets into the blue bin, they don't think is actually getting recycled. They think ends up in the waste stream, going into garbage, right? So it is focused on all the stuff that doesn't actually get recycled.
So probably first and foremost, the word that our industry has used for decades is the word scrap. Now, when you talk about trading your recycled iron, people call it scrap. That's one thing. But when you get out to a policymaker, a regulator, or the public, when you say the word scrap, they quite frankly don't know exactly what that means. That's why the word is not a word that should be used when defining our industry, because people think of scrap as a lot of different things. Some people think of what comes off the table at the end of supper.
I also think there's a perception in the community today, to your point, that, well, yeah, it's scrap metal, right? It's dirty, it's you know, but we don't necessarily have that same kind of association when we talk about other aspects of recycling, right? I mean, I've got a blue bin at home and I'm recycling plastic bottles and cans, and I'm doing this because this is good for the environment.
People think of scrap as junk. People think of scrap as waste. People think of junk as what goes to a landfill. And well, quite frankly, that is detrimental to our industry by using terminology, calling waste diversion. Oh yeah, our industry is diverting materials from landfill. No, we're not. Our materials are a commodity. They were never going to go to a landfill. So it's really important. The words you choose to say and how you describe what we're doing is important. Well, think about, build a hospital today, gentlemen, without our industry.
Yeah, you're right.
Try.
Can't.
No, you cannot. Think about, okay, obviously the foundation rebar, then the steel structure, right? Okay, all that. Hospital bed frames, made from steel. How about all those instruments that they're made from nickel stainless, the scalpels and the tables, and then all the other recycled content that goes into a hospital, the wheelchairs, right? The gurneys, and then all the hospital doors. They're made from brass, non-ferrous. Where's that coming from? It's all recycled metal. So a hospital today without what we do, virtually impossible.
Yep.
Now, if you look across at almost every other industry, they don't talk about the stuff that they do to the raw materials. They talk about the stuff that comes out.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
If you're a home builder, you don't talk about putting up the walls, you talk about the house.
Okay.
If you're Apple, you don't talk about the wires and the chips, you talk about the iPhone and the iPad, right?
Okay.
And so one of the big things and one of the big shifts that we recommended was, instead of focusing or starting with the inputs, start with the thing that people care about. Start with the outcomes. Start with the outputs.
Okay.
And so that was really the biggest shift that we found, is that the more that you started where customers were, where regulators were, where legislators were, the more that they could see, this contributes to stuff that I care about. Now let me learn about the industry instead of the other way around.
I think that's the beauty of recycled steel, especially from an EAF standpoint, because it is continuously recyclable. And so, as I've said to you in pre-conversations, you know, some people look at it as trash, and the old saying, one man's trash is another man's treasure, I think it applies here. What is considered waste is actually a treasure to the United States and all over the world, because that is recyclable, It is going to be used to create jobs. It's going to be used in a very green method.
We are taking used things and making them new again.
I think there needs to be a larger push by the steel industry, the steel community, to better communicate this circular economy idea. We need to do a better job of explaining how that circularity works and highlight the recycling side of it.
I think it's so important that we educate people in the high schools about what is an industry like ours all about? What is a company like ours all about? Because they just don't understand, and they don't know the range of jobs and career opportunities that there are.
What's your message to those who want to hang on to these words that are really detrimental to our industry? Why do they need to understand the change?
So, look, I think this happens a lot, right? Change is hard. Changing language is hard, particularly when it's your industry and you're emotional about it. The question that we ask is, what are you trying to achieve with your communication? Are you trying to satisfy yourself, or are you trying to achieve another objective? If your objective is to educate, to engage, to persuade outside audiences, then why are you using language that they don't like? Because every time that we test it with those audiences, it leads to negative associations. So you may like it, that's fine. Talk about it at home. When you're trying to do something with your communication, use the language of the people that you're trying to communicate with.
Our industry has done a horrible job of hiding over the last couple decades. It's time to come out, time to show the good that we are. What would you say to other companies who aren't quite as involved as Commercial Metals? How would you encourage them to do this?
Do more in the communities in which you operate, first and foremost. Because it's the right thing to do, but also because it's a great way to publicize your company as a great place to work and a place that cares about the community and cares about the employees that work there.
This is an industry that has reinvented itself. And I think that this is a story that needs to be told. I think it's fantastic, kind of what you're doing, because you're absolutely right. It's a super exciting industry. I tease my kids as their friends are getting out of college, saying, all you kids who are in engineering, come work at our company, right? And there's a tremendous opportunity here, because you have the combination of it's green, all the things that the young people today like. It's the technology that you talk about. I mean, you gotta come to a mill. When I was coming out of college, I went to work in an investment bank in New York. My first assignment was working on a project with a steel company, and I went into the steel mill. I saw what they were doing. It was so fascinating to me. I've never kind of looked back. I've always had an affinity for this industry.
If this was a pile of gold, would anybody call it waste? Oh, hell no. Just because gold's worth a little more, this is worth a lot of money.
Yeah.
So if you told somebody, I'll tell you what, you want this for, just take it off my hands. Wow, what I would want that. Well, you just turned down $200,000, yeah, right?
When you start to look around, as you point out in Repurposed, when you start to look around and say, go live a day without recycled materials, it's a powerful idea to think about. I think every industry, to some extent, has the same refrain. We don't get credit for all the good stuff we do. They don't understand us. They don't appreciate how important we are. And the answer to that is often, well, let's just educate. But people don't want to be educated. They're too busy. They've got too much going on. What they want is a shortcut, a mental shortcut, to better understand and better appreciate what it is that an industry does. The simplest way to do that, the highest return on investment way to do that, is to find the words that emotionally, instantly, credibly, and effectively resonate with the audiences that you're trying to reach, and use those words.
What are some of those things that resonate with people?
Yeah, I mean, the simplest thing is call it the recycled materials industry. Because you're starting from the end and working backwards, right? Because as soon as you call it the recycled materials industry, you start talking about it from the stuff that you create perspective. You can go backwards, you can still talk about your team and your technology and your innovation and all the stuff that you do, but you're starting in the right place. Okay. Talk about the fact that you are a raw material, right? If you say that you create, you have a renewable source of raw materials for infrastructure, everyday items, healthcare, whatever it is, now you're explaining to them where you fit within the supply chain, why you are valuable. Scrap is not valuable. Raw materials, they're valuable.
We are not waste. That's so vitally important because waste is what has no further use. The materials that we trade every day, it's a commodity. Our materials is what's important for the infrastructure of a nation and the security of the nation and for the health of the nation. Not waste, not junk, and not scrap. Recycled materials is what makes this up. And Michael Zmyslansky helped bring this into focus because again, it's not what you say, it's what they hear. And now through Repurposed and through my goal and through my purpose, we're going to tell the story that hopefully sinks in and that will get to people who will say, hey, our children need to learn this in grade school. They need to know what real recycling is, and they need to know how their schools are made, how the cars, the buses, the roads that they go on to go to school, how it's made. So from the curriculum as a kid to educating the elders, the proper words and the proper language we use is vitally important.
On the next episode of Repurposed.
So the first time you saw that in a melt shop, did you say, this is where I want to work?
Oh, absolutely. My first time going in for my interview, I remember thinking, man, I know what's going to happen. Like I've messed with molten metal, I've done brass, I've done aluminum. Like I know what this is. You get in there and you see that charge bucket drop for the first time,